again from WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. You're joining us for a special episode today because actually WJ Live is not live. This is a pre-recorded episode. The first one I think we've done in months and months and months. The reason, we're getting a new set. So stay tuned. We're going to have some cool new digs to show you, I'm hoping by the end of the week. But for now, this is taped just a couple hours before our normal airtime. And joining me on this taped episode, on my left, Grant Atkinson. He is a new reporter at the Western Journal. And on my right, Caleb Gina, he's a new assignment editor. This is Caleb's second time on the show, so we're thrilled to have him. We've got three big topics today that we have been following in the news and I think are going to be particularly interesting to those of you who are watching. First off, we have got polling that is, no. First off, we have got information about a UFC fight. If you saw that graphic roll up there for just a moment, this is another leftist victory for feminism, or is it? We've got a transgender fighter actually bloodying a female fighter. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about polling. If you ask me, I think we're looking at more and more of a potential red wave in 2022, and that wave may still be going in 2024. We've got polling data to back that up that you're not going to want to miss. But first off, Caleb, you are going to be talking with us about President Biden's vaccine mandate. It turns out that there's already an exception to the mandate. It's for a special class of people. Tell us about it.
That's right. We at the Western Journal have a tendency to identify one of government's worst habits, which is the rules apply for thee and the rules do not apply for me. So on Thursday, when the vaccine business mandate was expanded to include any business that has 100 or more employees, which they also threatened them with very punishing fines of $14,000 per infraction, there was a rather large population of people that these rules don't apply for. And guess what? It's all of our elected officials, Congress, the judiciary branch, and all of their requisite staffers. So I think we were all very surprised on Thursday when this order came down, because this was a massive expansion of government power.
People didn't know it was going to be this big,
Sure.
did they? They were thinking something smaller scale.
Absolutely. I think we all waited for an opportunity where the Biden administration was going to ramp this up, but you were almost waiting for some type of pretext where there was going to be 300,000 cases or some other hysteria that would kind of fuel them or give them the political capital to make such a bold move. But they just decided to do it anyways. And I think part of the conversation we've been having here at the office, and maybe this is done in an effort to distract from the Afghanistan surrender and all of the news that's associated with that, or from 9/11, where a lot of the victims' families don't want Biden participating in all of the memorials. So it does feel somewhat strategic that the administration decided to roll this policy out in the midst of those external circumstances. But we just did some numbers, like looking at how many businesses would be impacted by this ruling, and our low estimate is about 170,000 American businesses now are being squeezed by this federal mandate. And it's something that also is going to put a lot of restraints on their business in that they have to figure out a way to get everyone tested. So that's going to take time away from productivity. They're going to have also issues where maybe certain people have religious or medical exemptions that are now going to be completely glossed over. Yet the American people, you know, Joe Sixpack is the one who's going to have to deal with all of this. And yet our elected officials, the ones who enjoy lifetime pension and security and every type of benefit you can imagine, they're the ones that aren't going to be influenced by this at all. So my question to you two is this surprising, considering just the Biden administration has exhibited somewhat of a blatant arrogance throughout their tenure? Or is this just something where they're thinking most of the American people are not going to be paying attention to this news, and this will just get lost in the rancor of the 24-hour news cycle?
To me, it's a sort of a pattern that has gone on since the beginning of COVID, and now it's continuing, in my opinion, after the COVID pandemic has reached its peak. Yes, we still have cases. I believe that the pandemic in itself is no longer a pandemic as it's defined. It's a disease that we will have to live with. But as we are now well over a year into this pandemic, I think that we're continuing to see the pattern repeat. It started towards the beginning in March 2020, the months that were kind of near around there. I'm not sure exactly when this happened, but we saw videos coming out of, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, going to a salon and getting her hair done. We saw her showing us a great video of her ice cream freezer, of all the things that she's able to enjoy, while other Americans don't have jobs because of their
Newsom
terrible
at French
policies.
Laundry. That
right.
was the other one
Newsom,
that made big news.
I mean, so many of these, maybe not even national elected officials who we're talking about, not congressional people, but some of them are even governors or people who are making rules in their own states. And we saw health officials in California as well doing the same thing, not having to abide by the very rules that they have either personally put in place or that they have at least championed and said that these are great ideas. And so I think that this is a continuation of that.
And they were all, I think to a one, they were all Democrat governors.
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw Democrat mayors. It was the mayor of Baltimore who tweeted that everyone needed to stay locked down, stay inside, don't go outside. I think he tweeted that from the tarmac as he was about to fly down to Barbados or something. I can't, I may not have all of those details exactly right, but it was something like that. And so, yeah, that's one of the problems when you impose onerous burdens and lots of rules on the American people. Your tendency is to not want to abide by them either. And if you're in power, you can get away with that, which essentially is this. I mean, yeah, what was the takeaway from Animal Farm? All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And it's got to be good if you're Congress, man. You don't have to be vaccinated. That's kind of nice if you don't want to be vaccinated. You don't have to worry about the police being defunded because you've got your own, your own
you have
security.
a personal security detail.
You don't have to worry about that. If you didn't have a personal security detail, most of those folks make enough money that they could have their own personal security detail, just like the folks in Hollywood do, the people who are for defunding the police and who are against the Second Amendment and your right to self-defense. So all of these, it must be great to be a member of one of those protected classes. And when you talk about privilege, when they talk about privilege, they're really talking about the wrong group. They make it a racial thing, that there are certain privileges that go with different races. I would argue that's not the case at all. There are different privileges depending on your politics. That's what really, really privilege looks like, and depending on the amount of wealth you have. So anyway, your question was, does this surprise you? And no, it doesn't surprise me at all. It surprises me that Congress subjects itself to any of the laws that they pass. For a long time, that was a constitutional amendment that was out there. People wanted to pass an amendment that said Congress had to was subject to all of the laws that it passed, and that's not made any progress. So I'm not surprised at all.
Two other relevant points I just want to make real quick before we move on. The USA Today reported that 1 out of 5 Congresspeople have not been vaccinated. So this is unconfirmed. This isn't something we're going to say is like a gospel truth.
1 out of 5 have not
been vaccinated.
20% haven't been vaccinated.
So this is not some insignificant number of people where it's like, 1 or 2 are off the hook here. Like, there are actual people that are impacted by this decision. And something else I think is interesting to mention is Nancy Pelosi was quoted in April saying that she doesn't have the authority to require her fellow members of Congress to get the shot. But I just see the irony in that being the Biden administration likely does not have the authority to mandate private businesses to force their employees to get the shot. So she's saying that, we don't have the operating space for this, yet they're willing to plow ahead with something that's blatantly unconstitutional as long as it doesn't apply to them. So clearly the rules are only a function of, does it benefit us at this time? And I just think this is a very disappointing display from our elected officials, and at the very least, they should be held account for such a hypocritical decision.
Well, I think it's kind of also a tacit admission that the mandate is a bad idea. Like, if it's such a great idea and it's so helpful and it's going to stop the spread of the pandemic, we know that all those things are likely not true. We've seen that vaccines, while they might stop serious illness and death, they don't stop the spread of the pandemic, and that's a whole nother conversation. But if this vaccine mandate is so great and it's such a godsend fix for this entire pandemic, then why would they even have a need to say we don't want to subject ourselves to this? Why are there 20% of Congress members reportedly who haven't gotten the vaccine? Maybe because they're not actually buying all the crap that they're putting out there. I mean, if this is such a great idea, why does there need to be exceptions for the very people who are pushing these ideas? I don't understand.
Yeah, if it's a good idea, doesn't it make sense that you would subject yourself to it as well? The hypocrisy there is truly remarkable to me, but it's not unexpected at this point. And that is the issue with the political class. That's the issue with the elites. Really, the lines in America are being redrawn right now. It is far less about Republicans and Democrats anymore, and it is far more about the elite metropolitan liberals and leftists, and more about the heartland flyover country rural conservatives. And it's an enormous problem because you've got the group of people with most of the wealth has been corrupted by the left and co-opted by the left, and they have the ability to make laws for all the rest of us. And federalism is supposed to take care of this, where you handle most law at the state and local level, and that would fix it. Then Arkansas could have whatever sort of laws it wants, whatever sort of legal system it wants, and Connecticut could have another one. And then if you're on the left, you move up to Connecticut if you want to, if you feel like you just can't stand being around Arkansans anymore. And if you're for small government, you can move to the South, move to Arkansas, move to Texas, Louisiana. But that's really not what has happened, because the left is not content to let anyone else be free. Society is not just, as far as the left's concerned, unless the left controls all of it. And that runs against the idea of federalism and republicanism in general. So remember, folks, all animals are equal, but as long as you've got elites in D.C. who think that they're better than everybody else, then some animals will be more equal than others. Thank you, Orwell. So let's shift from that. It's very clear that the American public is on to what's happening here. They realize there are two different, to borrow from the Democrats, there are kind of two different Americas right now, one for the elites and one that's not. And that is showing up in polling, and it's showing up in a place that should absolutely terrify Democrats, and that is with independents. As we have known or as has been argued for years, you don't really win based on your base. You win based on convincing the folks in the middle. Now, that's pretty popular common knowledge. Rush Limbaugh always disagreed with that. I'm not positive where I land on it, but to the extent that independents are important, the Democrats are in enormous trouble. New polling information out from Trafalgar. We got this morning, and I'm going to read you a couple of these statistics. So first off, the majority of American voters say Biden doesn't have the constitutional authority to impose those vaccine mandates. Now, 83.5% of Republicans say that. 27% of Democrats say that. Now, here's the killer. 68% of independents say that. So 68%, more than 2/3 of independents say Biden doesn't have the authority to do what he just did. Now, large majorities of independent and Republican voters support governors fighting to block Biden's mandate. Similar stats, 78.5% of Republicans say they support state governors in trying to block it. 30% of Democrats say they support. 56% of independents say they support. Two more. The majority of America's voters believe the mandate sets a dangerous precedent that could be abused by future presidents. 80% of Republican voters say yes. 58% of independents say yes. 30% of Democrats say yes. Now, if Trafalgar's info wasn't bad enough, let me quote from the Washington Times this morning. A new CNN poll finds that 74% of U.S. adults now say they are, quote, very or somewhat angry about the way things are going in the U.S. That includes 88% of Republicans and 70% of independents. Another 69% of U.S. adults now say that things are going pretty or very badly. That includes in the country. That includes 91% of Republicans and 72% of independents, and heaven help them, 49% of Democrats. Illegal immigration still a concern along these lines. The CNN survey found that 77% of U.S. adults say it's important for the federal government stops the movement of undocumented immigrants into the U.S. Here's the partisan breakdown. 95% of Republicans say that, 52% of Democrats, 76% of independents. So, fellas, we're now beginning to think about 2022. Folks are gearing up for that. On the other side of the holidays, you're really going to see it gear up. If I'm a Democrat and I'm looking at these numbers, what do I feel?
Well, your stomach is turning.
Yeah.
The bottom line is something I think we talked about in one of our meetings here relatively recently, is there's a lot of people, due to the Afghanistan surrender, that have woken up from their slumber when it comes to American politics. And it's just even expanding just beyond Afghanistan, where people go to the pump and they see the prices and they're like, this is way more than I was paying last year. Or somebody wants to do a remodel on their home and they're saying these raw materials cost way more than I would have had to pay otherwise. So when all of these political issues all of a sudden start to head downstream and affect people in the granular decisions they make in their life, I think that's what we're seeing bore out in the math. It's just translating outside the DC Beltway and the 24-hour news cycle, and is now becoming table conversation at dinner with everyone at the in their own homes. So I think the American people notice what's happening, and as much as the White House wants to continue to move on, move the goalposts, or just try and switch issues, a lot of their dysfunction is coming home to roost.
I went to Home Depot over the weekend and was thinking about replacing the pegboard in my garage because the 180-degree Phoenix summer is causing it to ripple. And I was stunned. A 2 foot by 4 foot section of pegboard costs, I think, $16 now.
Jeez.
It was just unbelievable. I was trying to replace the floor in a cabinet, in the cabinet under the sink at the house, and a 3/4 inch thick 4 foot by 2 inch piece of plywood cost. There was some of it there costing, I think, $50. It's unbelievable. So let's say you're a Democrat, you're running for office, you are well aware of what the polling shows. What do you do, Grant?
I think that
other than pray, except you're a Democrat,
switch
so
parties,
you don't
maybe?
believe in God.
Yeah,
so you're kind of screwed.
I'm trying to think of what
or switch parties where you believe in
switch
God.
parties, become an independent, run as an independent. I don't know. There's not a lot of options. I think that
Lieberman approach.
I think that the reason that Democrats should be really concerned is that this is not an isolated topic that independents feel that they're siding a lot more with Republicans on.
It's all over
every
the board.
topic.
It's all over the board.
You talk about wanting to distract, the Biden administration wanting to distract from their Afghanistan debacle that they've created by going to COVID. There's plenty of polling that says that Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal is a complete disaster. Independents side with Republicans way more on that. So he switched to COVID. Now you have independents siding with Republicans on COVID.
75%.
So it's like every issue that they try to switch the attention on, it doesn't matter because Biden is still so terrible of a president that independents don't like what he does. And there's nowhere for Biden to turn and pin his hopes on because everything he's doing is so terrible that nobody is agreeing with it.
So Caleb, just quickly, what do they do? What do the Democrats do to deal with this? Is there any way to deal with it?
They'll probably declare a new holiday. That's what I would imagine. They'll just find some obscure date and they'll be like, oh, well, this is a new national holiday. Everybody gets a day off and look at us, benevolent big government, giving you, a little bit of time off from work. That's what I think.
So essentially the Gavin Newsom approach will give you something, will give you money, which essentially is what Newsom did, trying to buy his way out of the recall.
I think
you're thinking they're just going to try to try to open up the floodgates from heaven and give people stuff.
I mean, it's a little tongue in cheek, but I think when it comes to delivering results, we know this administration is incapable of even living up to its own promises, of which the three of us on this panel do not want them to do in the first place.
I feel like eventually the Democrats who want to have a legitimate chance in elections, especially in like purple states, you're going to have blue states like California who are going to just vote for them anyway. But if Democrats want to make progress with these independents, I think their only option that's starting to look more and more likely is that they're going to have to distance themselves from the Biden administration.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see another option for them.
So then the question, we've got to move on. Then the question becomes, what in the world happens in 2024? Are the Democrats just doomed? And frankly, I think, I hope, and I pray that they are. So that's all right. So that's polling. So let's talk about, so we've talked about politics. Let's talk about social issues now. One of the themes here is that middle America is truly waking up to the Dems game, to the left's game. And maybe nowhere is that more apparent than what's happening with the trans movement in sports. And Grant, you've got a pretty, it's a pretty brutal story here.
It's pretty disturbing, honestly, what happened on Friday night and kind of got covered a lot this weekend. It, I would say, sort of went viral on Twitter from a lot of different outlets reporting it. There was a man, his name is Alana McLaughlin. He's a 38-year-old man who believes he is a woman, has taken hormone therapy and things to supposedly transition to a woman. Obviously, that's not a thing that can happen in the real world. You can't become a woman, but he is decided.
You can't change your chromosomes.
You can't do that.
You can't change your chromosomes.
But he has decided he's going to be a woman, and the left has decided that they're going to treat him as a woman. And that has gone so far as to say that he can now compete as a female MMA fighter. In a combat sport competing against other women, he is now allowed to punch them, choke them, kick them, hit them, whatever he would like to do, because he has decided that he is a woman, and so he's going to be competing in this combat sport.
Now, this is not a guy who had puberty blockers and started this transition when he was 6 years old. God help us. Correct. This is somebody, he has full male masculine testosterone, bone and muscle structure.
He is a former U.S. Special Forces soldier. He was in the U.S. Army. There are pictures of him. I didn't pull one up. But there are pictures of him when he was in the Army. He's absolutely jacked. Probably weighs well over 200 pounds. Super muscular. Clearly a man, grown man. And he just decided he was going to start doing this transition. I don't have the exact date, but I think it was within the last 5 to 10 years he decided he was going to do this. He's 38 years old.
But the point is he has all the benefits testosterone confers.
Right, exactly.
As far as physical prowess.
So he finally found himself an opponent. Her name was Stellene Provost. They were fighting in Miami, Florida during a preliminary fight. And there's a picture of him. He ended up winning in the second round by submission. He choked out the woman. There's a picture that we'll pull up here of him brutally choking this woman. You can see how helpless she appears to be.
Bloodied.
Yes.
Bloodied. She's literally bloodied.
And that's another argument, too, that this man, McLaughlin, tried to make, is that he said he was hit a couple of times in the first round. So obviously it's not that he's so much better of a fighter than the woman because he got hit a couple of times. What really happened was, if you watch the video, which I did, unfortunately, I wouldn't really recommend it because it's pretty disturbing. But if you watch the video, what happens is he clearly does not know how to be an MMA fighter. This is his debut fight. He's undisciplined, I would say, as a fighter. And so, yes, he gets hit in the face a couple times by this woman who is a trained MMA fighter and who's been doing MMA fights for her entire life. So, or not her entire life, but for a long time during her career. And so she knows what she's doing. She hits him a couple times. Then in the second round, when he ends up winning, you see him land a couple of serious punches that clearly rock this woman. He eventually picks her up, throws her to the ground, and then begins choking her out. So this argument of, well, I got hit a couple times in the first round, really, to me, doesn't carry any weight, because just because you got hit in the first round doesn't mean that you're not much stronger and much more able-bodied than a woman, because that's how God created you. So I guess my question to you guys is, we've seen a lot of people, we have seen backlash, but we've also seen people praising it. There's an outlet called Pink News, which is an LGBT publication, and they published a headline calling McLaughlin a trailblazer. A trailblazer, yeah. Hero, trailblazer, I've seen all of those, that type of language.
We haven't made a lot of progress in culture as far as making it okay for people with male chromosomes to punch people with female chromosomes. He's blazing a trail.
That's actually what my question was going to be. Is, to me, it feels like seeing a picture of a transgender person beating up a woman. That seems to fly directly in the face of this narrative of just let them do whatever they want. It's not hurting anyone. If they want to be a woman, like, it's fine. It doesn't concern you. Do you think that these images, these type of stories, are going to help or hurt the transgender movement?
Real fast, Caleb. We're running out of time.
So I think when it comes to the vast majority of our viewers and the American people, I would argue common sense still prevails. So when you see the footage, when you see the pictures, common sense kicks in and you say, this cannot be right. We can't be roundly applauding a woman absolutely having her clock cleaned on national television by a former Spec Ops troops who's getting paid to inflict this damage upon her. So I think a big part of this stuff always goes back to optics. The optics were abhorrent. So if they think that this is going to be some celebratory event, I think they're sadly mistaken.
That's good. That'll have to be the last word on it, because we are about to run long and we got a new set to take care of here. So that is super exciting. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Grant. We appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. We're very grateful to you. Someone asked online the other day, may I borrow your mug? What they could do to get one of these cool WJ Live mugs. And there's an easy way to do that. You can go to westernjournal.com/join. That's westernjournal.com/join. Sign up there, and that is a way for you to partner with us to help support the journalism that we do day in and day out. And you will get the satisfaction of knowing you are helping with a good cause, but you'll also get a cool mug like this. So that's it for us. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button. After that, click the little bell that pops up. That'll make sure you get notified when we go live. No shadow banning for us or for you. That is it for Caleb, for Grant, for everybody in the booth and in the newsroom. I'm Josh Manning. We're going to see you Wednesday again on WJ Live.
Welcome back to WJ Live, and I'm joined today by assignment editor Joey Chester, as well as crack reporter Michael Austin.
Yes.
Yes.